There are stories of incest that originate from times in the Bible. Although there are variations of the same story, in my opinion, sexual dysfunction has been around for a very long time. When a child is molested, it can affect them in so many aspects. Adults that have been molested suffer from low self-esteem, feelings of abandonment, lack of trust, and promiscuity. This is an issue that festers in our society still today. The reason for this is that most often it's done in secrecy. The victim of child molestation most times will not share that this is happening to them. As a result, it creates feelings of shame, fear, and confusion. This is why sometimes the abuse continues. Stephen Esty and Michael Bomberger say that the statistics show 33% of girls and 14% of boys are molested before the age of 18. This type of behavior has been recorded since the biblical years. Leviticus chapter 18, verses 6 through 24 describe God warning against this behavior. In particular, verse 6 reads, "No one is to approach any close relative to have sexual relations. I am the Lord." This comes from the Life Application Bible. Women and children weren't considered in the same class as men were. Men were treated as if they were superior and they could rule or lord over the women. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16 says, "I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you." I believe that this is false with the idea that men could do whatever they choose and women had to accept it. The idea that this was a bad thing formed during more current times. Again, I turn to Leviticus chapter 18, verse 6 through 18, where God warned against such behavior. Society has changed, thank goodness, since then. Women have found that they have rights that are equal to men. We eventually started to look at the molestation for what it is, abuse. Being molested causes tragic and irreparable damage in a person's life. If a person doesn't deal with the issues, the problems can compound. C.J. Newton says, "Child abuse is like a virus. It attacks the host organism and alters it physically." I definitely agree with Mr. Newton. However, I feel that not every survivor will turn out to be an abuser themselves. Newton also says children that have been molested have been victimized. An adult survivor may often choose relationships that are unhealthy. I think this is because survivors haven't experienced relationships that are healthy. Survivors have a greater chance of being abused more than once. The Rape Crisis Information Pathfinder website also says this is a cycle that can be very hard to break. Adult survivors have trust issues and as a result may take advantage of others. A survivor of abuse will always have some type of psychological turmoil going on inside of them. You aren't able to look at a person and determine whether or not they have been abused. This is because someone that has been abused will use many coping mechanisms to get through life. There are emotional scars that you cannot put a band-aid on. Carol Boulware suggests it is difficult to heal a scar that you cannot touch. She also says this is the worst type of abuse. Although this is a very arduous issue, there is hope in sight. We are starting to recognize signs and symptoms and are finding various ways to reach out to people that have been abused by bringing light to the issue. I believe that we can show that this is not something the victim should be ashamed of and that they don't have to suffer alone. You are going to be able to be happy and successful in life. These are some of the statistics that I have researched and found to further validate my point. The FBI reports that the National Institute for Mental Health found only 1 to 10% of victims ever tell that they were abused. are far less than girls to report this. The average child molester will molest 50 girls before being caught and convicted. Statistics say that 1 out of every 3 to 4 girls has been sexually assaulted by the age of 18. Boy out of every 6 will be abused by the age of 18. Although we have some reports and convictions to base these statistics on, they are actually not accurate. So many cases of child molestation go unreported each year, so we really cannot estimate the real numbers. A child molester that seeks out boys will molest 150 boys before being caught and convicted, and he will commit at least 280 sexual crimes in his lifetime. The standard pedophile will commit 117 crimes in their lifetime. Most sexual abuse happens between the ages of 7 and 13. There are over 491,720 registered sex offenders in the United States. 80,000 to 100 above offenders. Molesters known by the family or victim are the most common abusers. The acquaintance molester accounts for 70 to 90% of reported cases. This is a graph by O'Meara and Pedersen on prevention and treatment of child abuse. The audience.
Yeah. What signs should you look for to know if a child is being molested?
The signs that you would look for is that children will exhibit different types of behavior. They can become very aggressive, very withdrawn, or they may even become abusers themselves. Anybody else?
Why do you think it's that kids find it difficult to report what's happening to them?
Because most children feel ashamed and feel like what is happening to them is somehow their fault.
I have another question.
Okay.
Why did child molesters get away with it so long?
Child molesters use many different ways to gain a child's confidence, and they are very manipulative. Okay? And that's going to be the end of my presentation. Thank you.